My circle of support during my younger years was my family. They didn't see me as a child with a disability. They saw me as Genna. I was born in Northern California in 1979. Right away, my mom became my advocate. When I was 6 weeks old, a doctor told my mom that I would have a lot of challenges living a normal life, an independent life. These kinds of messages went on for a long time. One doctor told my mom that occupational and physical therapy wouldn't do anything for me, but it might make her feel better. That just made my mom more determined. She wanted me to see my life in a positive way. We moved from California to Long Island, then to New Jersey, and finally to Connecticut during my first year of my life. I got to see a lot of doctors along the way. My mom learned that doctors can have the same opinions about the same things and always thought they were right. So my mother learned to shop doctors. Whenever a doctor used words like don't expect or she probably won't, we went for another opinion. Mom wanted doctors who saw the potential in me and gave hope instead of dead ends. She focused on my abilities and my life of purpose. I grew up in Woodbury, Connecticut. When we first moved there, people in town had to get used to seeing me. They would stop and just look at me. They were curious about why my mom was carrying me and other kids my age were walking. We used to go to this health food store in town. One day, when we got home, my mom saw I was not wearing one of my hearing aids. It could have been anywhere, between the car seats, in the parking lot, totally gone. The phone rang, and it was the store's owner. He told my mom he found my hearing aid in the bean bin. We got to know him pretty well because for some reason, I really liked putting my hearing aid in with the beans. I figured out later that my hearing aids were shaped like beans. Where else would it go? So, people in town were getting to know me. My earliest goals were to have friends, a social life, and belong to my community. So when I was 8 years old, I started going to school in town. I was really excited. I wanted to be treated like everyone else and do the same things that my peers of all abilities were doing. A couple of my teachers asked me to join Brownie Scouts. That's where I made friends. I went to birthday parties and sleepovers, and I felt included. But my experiences wasn't always so great. My dreams of a bigger life would only happen if my community was willing to include me. Along the way, I experienced ableism, discrimination, and bullying. All of these experiences would make me a stronger advocate for myself and eventually for others who have disabilities. There was strong advocacy happening at the time by a group of incredible people. Many of these individuals had disabilities. Some met at a camp in upstate New York when they were teenagers. When they were there, they shared what was important to them and talked about things that got in their way of having the lives they wanted. When they got older, a bunch of them and others went to Washington, D.C. They were advocating for laws that would take away barriers. These barriers kept individuals from getting jobs, going to college, and achieving their goals. Some of these barriers were physical, like not having ramps or elevators to get into buildings. And other barriers were attitudes of people who thought they knew who was able and who wasn't able to do certain things because of their disabilities. Many of us here today have experienced those attitudes. Well, they won. The American Disability Act, ADA, became a law in 1990, but it took a long time for changes in schools to happen. Because of this, lots of kids were going to school away from home. Those schools had ramps, elevators, programs, and other supports that mainstream schools didn't. There were kids in my town who who couldn't go to public schools because of this. So, children of my generation weren't used to seeing people with differences in their schools, and definitely not in their classrooms. They didn't know me as a person. They saw what they could see, and that was the disability. And they could see my hearing aids. During recess, there were kids who shouted, "Run, run, you'll catch your death," like it was an illness. They ran around me, and seeing me as my disability first wasn't just for kids. When I was 10 years old, my mom enrolled me in a drama club for children. We were there just to give it a try, and we only went once. They asked me to play out a skit, and I could not process what to do quick enough, and I started to cry. After class, one of the drama teachers came up to my mom and me in front of everyone, parents and kids. She was very loud and asked my mom what she thought she was doing. Having me at this class, her words were, "She has no business being here. What are you thinking? She shouldn't even be going to this school." Not one person spoke up. We knew some of these people, and they just stared at us. Mom calmly told this woman that everyone has the right to be included and to try. We walked out. It was around this time when I was 11 years old that I started having anxiety about going to school. I was included with my peers at homeroom, lunch, recess, gym, and choir, but not in the classrooms. Even the art teacher couldn't figure out a way for me to be included in her class. It seemed like the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, could have made that happen. A few accommodations here and there, and I'd be good to go. I was being taught in the learning center and was usually away from other kids, even there. I was isolated and very unhappy. Mom contacted an education advocate to help her. She had to find a way for me to be included instead of being isolated. It took 3 long PPTs, and the school wanted me to stay there. But my advocates fought hard for me. Finally, the school decided they could not give me the education I needed. I needed a program that would get me to the goal of having a job and living on my own. Also, I needed friends and a life. It's just too bad that the school at the time couldn't make that happen in my town. But I was still determined to belong to my community. I joined Girl Scouts and went to all the basketball games. My new school was an hour away from home, so I became a commuter. I got the education I needed, and I made so many friends there. All of my friends and I wanted the same things. We wanted the same experiences that all adolescents want. We wanted a social life. The only way for me to get that was to go to school for individuals with disabilities. We had plays, concerts, parties, and proms, and our families drove all over the state so we could get together for movies, sleepovers, and birthday parties. I even had a chance to get in trouble a few times. Many of the things I wanted to do, I saw my brother do. Greg is 4.5 years older, and I have always looked up to him. Everything Greg did, I wanted to do. One thing Greg did a few times was fly out to Idaho to visit our cousins. So when I was 15, I decided I wanted to visit my cousins too. And I wanted to fly all by myself. I really wanted this. I advocated with my mom that I should be allowed the dignity of risk. We should not be kept from doing the things that matter to us. We all need to have experiences, new things, so we can learn and grow. And they can be risky. But if you know it can be risky, find the supports that makes it less risky. An airline companion helped me change terminals, and my aunt always met me at the gate in Idaho. Remember when we could do that? Advocating for this has opened up so many new opportunities for me. And it gave me the confidence that I could dream bigger. I was growing into my own advocacy and learning to use my voice. And it felt powerful. When it was time for me to graduate from high school, I used my power and my voice again. I advocated for my right to graduate in my hometown. I wrote strong letters to the superintendent of schools and the director of special ed. I told them what I wanted to do. I was part of my community, and I should be able to graduate with my class. After all, I had tried to stay in my town to go to school there. Well, advocacy works. I was able to graduate with my class. During this time, I was really advocating for my rights. A few weeks before graduation, I walked into the kitchen and I told my mom what I wanted to do. I want to go to college. After all, Greg was going off to college. My friends and Girl Scouts were going off to college. Why couldn't I? I will never forget the look on my mom's face. She didn't expect that one. She told me she didn't know if we could find a college that would support my needs. She told me she didn't, wait, I felt angry, sad, and thought it wasn't fair, but I was determined. I told her, don't let my disability get in the way of my dreams. What could she say? We got to work. The next phase of my life was about to begin, but it took months of hard work. We were advocating, writing letters, having meetings, and being supported by good people from DDS in Connecticut. They believed in me and wanted to help me reach my goal. We found a college-based program that would help me learn skills I needed for an independent life. But I needed to find the funding. DDS had just started a new program called self-determination. I had the power and the right to put my funding towards services I choose. We formed a circle of support that included my DDS case manager and others. We started to find ways to get to my goal of college. Having people who believe in you is the most important thing you can have when you're advocating for your dreams and goals. It just makes your voice louder and your power bigger. The school I wanted to go to doesn't exist anymore. VIP, or Vocational Independence Program, was on the campus of NYIT in Central Islip, New York. DDS didn't really want to fund a school out of state, but because we kept advocating, they decided to help me achieve my dream and partially fund the VIP program. I was there for 3 years and learned so much. I learned job skills and life skills that would help me get ready for my independent life. I was independent there. I made mistakes and I learned from them. I learned valuable lessons about friendships. I learned what makes a good friend and what makes a bad one. I learned along the way, I lost most of my CDs, lots of money, and my long hair to a bad haircut that I got from a friend. I graduated with self-confidence, with the desire to live independently and to have a real job with real pay. There's one thing I have always wanted. No amount of advocating has worked so far. I want my driver's license and a car. I want the freedom that goes with it. I took driver's education at VIP and terrified the instructor. I also had a boyfriend once that let me drive his car. He had kept screaming, "Stop, stop." When I did stop, he jumped out of the car and was kissing the ground, literally. But I have not given up. A self-driving car is in my future. One thing I noticed on the campus of NYIT was that if you needed to get into a building, you couldn't do it if you used a wheelchair. This was true for dormitories and other buildings on campuses. There had to be a lot of people who wanted the same experiences but couldn't have it because there were no ramps. The American Disability Act, ADA, became a law in had been a law for 10 years back then. And still, people were being kept from living their lives the way they wanted to. We can never just assume that our rights will be given to us, even if they are legal rights. Advocacy can never stop. After graduation, I moved to the shoreline of Connecticut, and I lived there until last March. I had dreamed of being a self-advocate coordinator for a long time. When a position opened in New Haven, my case manager asked me if I wanted to apply. Well, yes. When I applied, they were cautious about hiring me for 2 reasons. The first reason was because I lived 45 minutes away. BDS was concerned that I wouldn't be able to get to my job in New Haven. I advocated for myself and I told them I would make it work. They agreed and gave me a chance to prove it. First, I tried using the bus, but the timetables didn't work for me. And then I found out about the Kennedy Center in Connecticut. They helped me learn to use the train and read schedules. So, a bonus, I got a bonus. I went to more Yankee games, sorry Red Sox fans, visited my dad in Vermont, and my family in Northampton. My other problem was that I didn't have enough funding in my budget to hire a support staff. I needed someone to help me with organization and other tasks. I also needed transportation around the state for meetings and conferences. So I rocked my advocacy rights. My case manager and I advocated for an increase in my budget. I wrote a letter about how I needed funding for job assistance. I explained how important being a self-advocate coordinator was to me. It was hard for them to find the money, but it happened. I hired and managed my own support staff. I had the accommodations I needed to have the job I wanted. During my 12 years working as a self-advocate coordinator for the state of Connecticut, I was able to advocate for much more than my own goals. I was able to help others find ways to advocate for themselves in areas of employment, healthy relationships, and more. Whenever individuals learn to advocate and use their own voices, they show others how it can be done. They can share their stories and help others rock their advocacy rights. I also advocated for change in language that could help people with disabilities to be seen as people, not their wheelchair, not their hearing aids, not their disabilities. Since I moved up to Massachusetts, I have been involved with the Allies Against Ableism organization at UMass in Amherst. ADA was established more than 30 years ago, and to this day, there are individuals with disabilities fighting for access to buildings on college campuses around the United States. Sometimes they have to prove to their professors that they are just as able as their peers with all abilities to have the degree they want. This is a great example of why advocacy can't stop. If you don't achieve your goals right away, keep on trying. I am grateful for this organization. I can help others rock their advocacy rights. When we advocate for our rights, we become known. We are seen. We have the dignity and self-respect. And people can learn from our advocacy. So, use your voice. Find the support that from people who believe in you. Share your stories and rock your advocacy rights. Thank you for being with me today. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Genna. That was such a powerful speech, and we're so impressed by you and all your amazing advocacy skills.